Hello everybody and welcome to another session of Scuba Talk. My name is Scuba Dave. Today we're going to talk about a Din Reg versus a Yoke. This week's segment. Alright everybody, we're going to talk about today what the differences are between a Din and a Yoke. There's a lot of myths out there. A lot of people will tell you a lot of things on what the differences are, and there's really not a whole lot of differences, not nowadays, not in the new regs that they're making nowadays. Back in the old days, when I say the old days, I'm talking 15, 20 years ago, maybe beyond that, okay? When the Yoke here in the United States, pretty much it's all we had, was just a Yoke. And the splines here were only rated to 3,000 psi. And most of us dove on aluminum tanks, or we dove on steel 72s, which a steel 72 only had 2450 psi rating, and aluminum tank only has 3,000 psi rating. So they would build the splines on the Yoke to handle 3,000 psi of pressure, okay? So they were safe, okay? Well then, over in Europe, they started going to the configuration of a Din. Over in Europe, steel tanks became more popular than aluminum, and with steel tanks, the tank can actually be a smaller size, okay, but it can hold more psi pressure. So an aluminum tank, an 80-foot cubic aluminum tank, is filled to 3,000 psi, to where a steel 80 is filled to 3,500 psi, or nowadays they're filled to 3,440. But if you get an older steel tank, they're 3,500 psi. And so the European connections started coming in because we needed to screw the valve or the reg into the tank, because the splines on the Yokes could crack, break, and if one of those were to break, you don't want to be where the other end's going to go, right? With all that pressure behind it. So what they did is we started getting valves, okay? Let's see if I can get one up here for us. So what they did is they started building valves for Din, for the steel tanks, which at that point required a Din valve. And basically all you would do is you would take it, line it up, and just screw it in, okay? Screw it all the way in. Boom. Now it's in there, turn it on, you're ready to go dive, okay? So that's how the Din would work, okay? Now most of us are pretty familiar with the Yokes, okay, and how a Yoke would work, okay? Okay, now this is a steel 80, okay? As you can see, it's a lot shorter than aluminum, but it weighs more. And you're going to hear people tell you, oh, if you get steel tanks, you can take weight off your weight belt. Look, if it takes 20 pounds to get under the water, 20 pounds is 20 pounds. Whether you're adding it because of the tank, and taking off your weight belt, 20 pounds still equals 20 pounds. Okay, so you still need it. Okay, but if you're a big guy like me, diving with a steel tank is beneficial because now I'm not trying to jam the soft weights in my ditchable pouches, or stuffing them in my non-ditchable, or having to wear a weight belt or put weights around my tank, okay? So the Yoke, so people were buying Din regs, and they would end up getting an aluminum tank going, oh, I can't use my reg. Well, Then they come out with the adapters. And they had adapters that were rated to 5,000 PSI on the spline. You would screw the adapter onto the din, and then you would mount this just normal, okay? So with a din reg, I can use it either way. I could use it with a yoke reg, a tank, or I could use it with a din tank valve, okay? So back then, that was a great bonus with a din reg, okay? Well then, those of us that had yoke, we were still stuck with only diving with yoke setups. And a lot of times, tanks, we couldn't dive still tanks. Okay, so that was a downside for it. But then, back around, I'm not quite sure of the year, around 2010, something like that, they started making tank valves that had a plug in there. So now I can take an Allen wrench, stick it in there, and I can remove the plug. If I take the plug out, now I can use my tank with a din reg, if I had a din reg. Or I can put it back in, and I can use my tank with a yoke setup, okay? Which is very nice if you're a steel tank owner and you have the plug and you're gonna loan a tank to a buddy to go dive, you know, whether he's got a din or he's got a yoke, a plug is gonna make it a lot nicer. He's gonna have a tank to use, okay? So we're back to what is better, the din or the yoke? That decision is yours. There really is no super beneficial. You're going to hear people tell you, oh, it's a lot more secure connection. That's garbage. Nowadays, they make these, they're rated 5,000 PSI, or some are actually stamped with 4,000 PSI on the spline. Okay, so they're more capable now and more safe to go onto a steel tank, high pressure steel tank. Okay, so you can still use them. Okay, they're still good regs, there's nothing wrong. You're going to hear people say, well, it delivers more air to the diver. No, that's not true either, because these are balanced. These are set when you take them into the shop or when you buy them brand new. These are set to only allow, I think it's between 120 and 140 PSI to go down through the hose. Okay, so you're not going to get any more. It's the exact same way with a yoke and with a din. Basically what it boils down to is, what do you want? I personally like a din. That's just me. But it boils down to what you're comfortable with, what you like, and that's pretty much it. Okay. I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you like it, give us a thumbs up. Click the notification button and subscribe to our channel. You'll be notified whenever we release new videos. With that being said, this is Scuba Dave with another session of Scuba Talk. Be safe, have fun, and keep diving.